the astronauts are always busy. So unless somebody on the space station has a specific interest in amateur radio, it's unlikely you'll hear them just doing a general conversation. So this moves us on to the CubeSat. So the CubeSat developed because, like I say, free rides to orbit, very expensive, and a paid-for ride to orbit, very expensive. So the CubeSat, 10 centimeters square satellite, less than 1 kilogram. Most of these satellites are. So this has brought the cost down. It's also brought the size down, and it's brought the available power output and antenna size down. So this is a picture of AMSAT 73, launched by the UK. It was one of the first CubeSats where the main mission was outreach for schools. The main mission was science. Secondary mission was a transponder. Still in orbit, still working. I think it's about 13 years later. It's now still working. So the cost to orbit for these is about 20 to 30,000, unless you can get a free ride from NASA. Do free rides for educational purposes. Lots of these being launched by universities because universities will have the budget to launch that. And they come in different sizes. So this is what they call a 1U satellite. You can have 2U up to I think 12U is the largest I've seen so far. Little antennas. Usually they just use measuring tape for these because they fold up. When it gets to orbit, little fusible link pops, and the antennas pop up. So what's operational today? So this is the if you go on the AMSAT.org status page, you get the live list of satellites. Everything in blue is what's been heard. This was on the 21st of April. So we have about 11 or 12 satellites that have transponders or FM repeaters working on them. Most of the other satellites are either university satellites that just have data or some form of experiment on them, or SSTV or SSDV images, live images of the Earth. Not very many satellites are allowed to do that, and you're limited on the resolution that you're allowed to take pictures at because they don't want us flying over certain parts of the world taking pictures of them. So this is the list. The oldest satellite here is AMSAT 7. AMSAT 7, I think, was launched in 1971. Still working. The batteries are long since expired on it. It initially worked for, I think, about 10 years. Then it stopped working. And for 20 years it was silent until one day the battery went open circuit, solar panels came to life, and the transponder started working again. So it only works in sunlight, but it's still there. It's quite distinctive when you hear it. It's quite a lot of Doppler on it, and depending on how many people are on the transponder, the audio can be a bit poor, but it still works. Nice big footprint, and it's been, like I say, I think currently it's the oldest working. It's certainly the oldest working amateur satellite. I think it's also the oldest working satellite in orbit, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Then we have some of the newer ones, CubeSats again, AMSAT 1, 2, 3, small satellites, CubeSats like that. Just going back to that on the CubeSats, the other difficulty launching satellites now is that you can't leave it in orbit. In the past with satellites like AMSAT 40, there was no means of disposal of the satellite when we were finished with it. So it's like AMSAT 10 is still out there somewhere going around in circles, and it will be forevermore. Now when you launch something into orbit, you have to have a plan to deorbit it. So you can put it in an orbit where it will decay over, we'd say, 10 years, and then it just burns up in the atmosphere. Some of these smaller satellites, they put them in a low Earth orbit that they will expire in 1 to 2 years. So then you don't have to have any sort of rocket propulsion on it to drive it into the atmosphere to burn it up. So that's another difficulty in launching satellites, and you have to get rid of them when you're finished with them. So, for example, AMSAT 7 will be there forevermore. It will most likely not decay for 1,000 years. Some of these here, they're just digital satellites. Fuji Oscar 29, another older satellite, lovely transponder, nice high footprint on it. Problem with this satellite is that there's an issue with the solar panels and the batteries. So it only works in continuous sunlight. And then if it's not in continuous sunlight, it will reset and turn itself off. Very difficult to turn it back on. So it was back on recently for a good few weeks. and now it's gone back off again. I think in May it'll be back into continuous sunlight again, and then continue working. ISS. ISS has a lovely transponder on it. It's a modified Kenwood D710, set up as a repeater. In repeater mode, I think it's got between 5 and 10 watts output. So it's a huge signal. It's a quarter wave antenna on it on the space station. Hear it with a handheld, work it with a handheld and handheld antenna on the right orbit. Good fun. They also do APRS on either VHF or UHF and SSTV. And then you'll hear the astronauts quite active on school contacts, not so often on a random contact, again, depending on who's up there. QO100, I think everyone's heard of QO100. This is the geostationary satellite. Good fun. Once set up, not much to do, but still, if you're into digital modes on the wideband section of this, fantastic. Guys are running DVB-S2 TV, two-way TV, amateur TV through it, so good stuff on that. There's a series of RS satellites here. A lot of Russian universities have big budgets for satellites, so a lot of the upcoming satellites are in the RS series of satellites, but we don't hear much about them beforehand. We hear about them when they're launched, because I think they have an agreement with Roscosmos to launch these, so they can get them up there pretty good. That's about it. USAT 11 is worth mentioning down there. That's rather old as well, because it's number 11. Still working, still squawking away. It's only telemetry at the moment, but still interesting to hear it after nearly 40 years in orbit. So this, I've just mentioned some of these already, but these are some of the transponder satellites that are active at the moment. These are the FM ones. So AMSAT 91 is almost at the end of its mission. Batteries don't work very well anymore. Sometimes pops to life. More than likely it's off. AO123 is on a schedule of maybe a few days on, a week off. It's a secondary. We only have secondary on the satellite, so they're doing science. When they're not, they put it on the transponder. Some of the Chinese satellites, CAS satellites, again, the satellites from China, we don't hear much about them before they're launched. And they have their own launch facilities and budget for that as well. So sometimes you get 6 or 7 of them at the same time, then nothing for months, and a few more. IO86 is in a very low orbit. You don't hear it here in Cyprus, but you do if you're down near the equator. Great satellite if you can get into it, but not from here. ISS, RS-95. Again, it's on during testing, but it's not on regularly. SO-50, one of the workhorse satellite, been there for years, fantastic. Working with a handheld, no problem at all. And SO-125, this is probably end of life as well. It's not a CubeSat, it's a half cube, so it's quite small. So that will probably decay in the next few weeks as well. And then we have our linear satellites, so SSB passband. AMSAT 7, spoke about that, the oldest one. It's got 2 modes. It's got VHF, UHF, or it's got 10 meters and UHF. We can't command the satellite anymore. You can't command it into a mode, but sometimes it flips from mode A to mode B, and then flips back from mode B back to mode A again. But when it's in mode A, it's fabulous. It's got a downlink on 10 meters. You can hear it even when it's over the horizon sometimes. So it's a bit fun. There's quite a few of these CatSats in orbit, but they haven't been activated yet. So they're doing their science first, and probably at the end of the mission of the science, they'll activate them. Fuji 29, that's the old boy. JO97, great little transponder, bit noisy on the passband, but another great transponder. RS-44, brilliant, great satellite. Has been going, I think it's nearly 10 years old now. And then we have QO100, which is the geostationary satellite. So how do you do all this? How do you work all the satellites? So the first thing you need is, my recommendation for all the satellites, full duplex is a must. You can do it half duplex, but when you're listening to satellites every day like I am, you can spot the guys that are not full duplex because they're the ones talking on top of everybody else because they can't hear the downlink. They're the ones that are whistling and giving it the olas. And they're the ones that are stamping all over you on the ISS repeater because they can't hear the downlink. They don't know if they can hear themselves or not. So full duplex is a must. So you can do that two ways. You can have a single radio like the FT847, the 9700 from ICOM, the 910H, any of the full duplex radios or full duplex FM radios, or you can have two radios. And most of the tracking software and most of the satellite software has a facility in it to control two separate radios for uplink and downlink. Tracking software is a must. You must know when satellite's over you, and you must be able to control your antennas and must be able to control your doplink up and down. Satellite passes are generally 10 to 15 minutes. If you have to do manual tracking and manual Doppler control, you ain't got time for making any contacts because you'll spend all your time doing that. So tracking software, there's lots of different softwares. I've used SAT PC32 for years, so that's my favorite. I'm just familiar with it. There's lots of others. I can't say that any are better than the others. I'm just familiar with SAT PC, and that's my favorite. Antennas. So the world is your oyster with antennas. So you can have very basic, or you can spend a fortune. You can have a white stick vertical. It will work, not very effectively and not all the time. So I have another slide on and we'll discuss some antennas in a moment. Rotator, I would say it's essential. Using omnidirectional antennas on satellites. It's good to make a contact through the ISS with a white stick antenna or a vertical or a quarter wave or something like that. Or you could even do it with the mag mount on your car or your handheld. But if you want to be successful and if you want to go for like DXCC via satellite, you need directional antennas and rotator control because omnidirectional antennas are just not going to do it for you. So we need rig control is ideal. Then you don't need to touch the radio. The software will do the rig control for you. When you change satellite, it will change frequencies. When you go outside the passband of the satellite, it will tell you. It will control the Doppler for you. Polarization control. So vertical, horizontal, right-hand circular, left-hand circular polarization. In the old days, the larger satellites, the antennas were all right-hand circular polarization. So when you purchased antennas, they gave you an option of right-hand circular polarization or left-hand circular polarization. It was really all you needed. You didn't need any more. It's not like that anymore now because the CubeSats have just got either a quarter wave or a half wave antenna on them. And the polarization will change quite a lot from acquisition of signal to time of closest approach to loss of signal. So being able to change through all four polarizations, to me, I would say it's the best. That's the 100% station. If you're fixed on right-hand circular polarization, when the satellite goes to either vertical or horizontal, you could have a difference of 10 to 20 dB in the difference between vertical and horizontal. So you'll go from full signal on the satellite, absolutely nothing. And this can also be a problem because the uplink, you may still be getting into the satellite, but you're not hearing it. And that's where people come unstuck sometimes. And that's where you get a lot of noise on the passband. People transmitting can't hear themselves, but they carry on transmitting anyway. And that's when you get a lot of OLAs on it. Inverting and non-inverting satellites. So early satellites were all inverting, which meant that as you went up the passband, your uplink frequency went down. Non-inverting, as you go up the passband, your uplink frequency goes up as well. With the smaller satellites like the CubeSats, there's not much space in there to put in lovely filtering and lovely notch filters to not have any descents in the satellite. Inverting is best for the smaller satellites because it helps with it helps with the Doppler shift, and also you have two different modes. So you will transmit either up in lower sideband and receive in upper sideband, and that helps to have less Doppler on a satellite that's only a 10-minute pass and traveling quite fast. Other software then. So there's there's tons of software out there at the moment. Software that I'd recommend is there's a small little piece of software, Pass Recorder it's called. It will automatically record the pass for you from your tracking software. Links to logbooks and things like that from your tracking software will bring the frequencies across, unless you have a package where it's all in one. And now there's even a guy has come out with a web-based all-in-one tracking software that will control your rotators as well. So you don't even need to have it installed on your PC. Great for if you're out portable, you don't need to bring too much with you at all, just a laptop, no cables. So the passband, this is the passband for the narrowband transponder on QO100. Plenty of space. The satellite was built commercially, so none of this was built by AMSAT DL. It was all built by Mitsubishi. And Mitsubishi at the time said, oh, well, how much do you want? This was deemed enough. But Mitsubishi at the time were like, is that all? We can give you more. This is the narrowband transponder. There's also the wideband transponder where we have ATV, digital, lots of experiments going on there. Bigger dish, more power. Other than receive the ATV from the transponder, I've not done much with it. It needs a bit more kit. This is an example of the passband for RS-44, and the reason I put this up is to show you the change in Doppler per pass. So if we look at the two green lines, that is with no Doppler. So if you transmit on 145.990, you will hear yourself on 435.615. That's with no Doppler, but there's always Doppler because it's moving. So at acquisition of signal, if you transmit on 145.990, you will hear yourself on 435.625. At loss of signal, you'll be on 605. That's why it's essential to have either a crib sheet like this, where you can find yourself on the passband, or have the software control this for you. So the software will calculate all of this. As long as your PC clock is up to date, your location is exact, and your Keplerian elements that you can download from AMSAT are correct, then computer will do all this for you. If you have to do this manually, it's a lot of work to do it. And you'll see that it's transmit on lower sideband and receive on upper sideband. This is the same for all of the linear satellites. So that was just one example. So antennas, what's available? So the Arrow antenna, very popular antenna, very lightweight, has its own built-in duplexer. So full duplex handheld like the Kenwood THD7, THD72, and I believe there's a new Anytone, a new version of the Anytone that is now full duplex as well. 5 watt output, that's ideal for, I think it's called the Anytone 168. I'm not fully sure, but and there's also 1 or 2 ICOM handhelds. Or you can not use the duplexer and use 2 handhelds, but just more buttons to press. So that's this one is called the Alaskan antenna because it's got 4 elements on UHF. There's a smaller version like that as well, and that's fine because you can hand track. You can follow the satellite by hand, and if the polarization changes, you can just change polarization on your wrist quite easily. Yeah. I think this is called the Leo pack, which is quite popular. For the current satellites, this is perfect because it's short boom, lightweight. Satellites now, because we don't have any high Earth orbit satellites anymore, this is fine. When we had high Earth orbit satellites, this was generally the size antenna guys used because at its perigee, the satellites were halfway from here to the moon. So you needed a bit more gain. This is a bit much for LEO satellites. It'll work, but your rotator is obviously doing a lot more work than it's doing here. These are my antennas just up the road here. It's the Wemo X Quad. I find these are excellent, fantastic antenna. They will do 4 polarizations with the polarization switches here. Very light, and that's just a Yaesu G5500 rotator, and it's a good few years old, this rotator now. So that's enough, and that's even enough separation between the two. They work fine. QO100 dish, this is the dish I use up the hill here. This is just one of repurposed NormSat dish. with a helical feed and an unmodified LNB for the downlink. This kit of antennas, I wouldn't recommend these. I've tried them in the past. You'll make a few contacts, but you'll just be frustrated and end up going out and buying these. You know, if you got an interest in satellites and you have these, fine for doing weather satellites or something like that, where the downlink signal is really strong and the polarization doesn't change much. But yeah, I wouldn't waste my money. So what can we work from currently? What can we work from 5B? So this is my heat map since 1st of January, I think. So this is since 1st of January. Anything outside that distance? Oh no, anything outside, well, that was LeoSat. So that roughly is our LeoSat footprint at the moment. Anything you see down here, down in Brazil, that's QO100 or further off to the east or north. But most of this here is LeoSat. And nearly all the Middle East here is LeoSat as well. It's quite busy. And some of these ones in India are RS-44 as well. So DXEC is quite possible from Cyprus on satellite, supplemented by QO100. But at the moment, I think I have... I've left out a cut and paste here, but currently my country total since January is on LEO satellite is 50 countries, and total together with Q100 is, I think, is 86 at the moment, but not all confirmed yet. So what else? What else is available? So in the good old days, everyone used to do weather satellites on 137 megahertz. The NOAA weather satellites, they've all been switched off, but there's still Meteosat are still running. And these images come from a little black box I left running in the UK called Pi NOAA. So it's just a little Raspberry Pi with a dongle, little bit of software, grabs some weather pictures every day. I think I'll move this and stick it here in Cyprus, and we can look at the weather every day. They're still working. It's 137 megs. It's low resolution. There is high resolution on 1.3 gigs. A little bit more difficult to receive. SSTV, there's quite a few satellites with SSTV. This was some images from a private space flight called Fram to Ham, or Fram2, which was a SpaceX Dragon capsule that went over the polar regions. They were running SSTV from, I think it was a ICOM 705. Is that the fancy ICOM portable radio, 705? Yeah. And the idea here was they sent a load of these images and you pasted them together like a jigsaw, and there was a prize for whichever school could just find which part of Antarctica or find this region. SONAT 2 sends Earth images. They're not live, they're a few days old, so that gets around the we're not spying on you with our amateur satellites images. And quite a lot of SSTV regularly from the space station. When the space station does SSTV, it's about 10-15 watt output on a quarter wave from the space station, so it's a huge signal, really easy to copy with a handheld and a rubber duck, even with your smartphone just held up to the speaker, so quite easy. APRS website is still using this fantastic modern map from APRS from the 1990s, but it's still working. It's a lot of fun. You can pop your position up, say hello to guys by APRS via the space station. And also the space station has a ham TV transmitter, which was broken for quite a few years, but is back on board and it's back in action. This is an image from last week. So you can see, this is Sophie, I forget her second name, Sophie, a French astronaut. She's using the Kenwood D710 that's in the Columbus module. They currently have 2 Kenwood D710s on the International Space Station, one in the service module and one in the Columbus module, which is the European module. Normally this one is used for school contacts in Europe. School contacts in Russia use the service module Kenwood. But the ham TV transmitter transmits on 2.2 gigahertz or 2.3 gigahertz. Quite difficult to receive this. When I was back in the UK, I did receive this once or twice, but you need to be very accurate in your tracking. You need to be very accurate in your receiver. But it adds a great element to a school contact when school kids can see the astronaut as well, and you can see that she was sending love hearts to them the other day, and it was good. It was great fun. And then, you know, you can see this was a Tim Peake contact where he was able to wave to them as well. And they sometimes do like, you know, showing how things react in space, gyroscopes, water droplets, and stuff like that on ham TV. So it's a unique experiment that they have on the International Space Station. The amateur radio experiment on the International Space Station is the longest running experiment on the space station. It was one of the first experiments we started and still going 26 years later. So. And then we come to, well, what's the future of amateur satellites? So again, it depends on who's got some cash, who's got some money to do it. So that's where we end up on what's called a ride share. So an exciting one at the moment is called FunCube Lite, which is going to be on a satellite called Jovian 1. Jovian 1 is a European Space Agency satellite, probably the size of this chair here, but it's mostly university experiments. But on the back of that, there's a FunCube Lite transponder as well. So hopefully when they're all finished doing their college science, FunCube Lite will just stay active all the time. Golf T is an AMSAT North America series of satellites. They started out very ambitiously with these satellites and then realized we can't talk to the Europeans about the satellites, so we can't launch them from any European providers. We can't get free ride to space anymore, so they were hoping to launch the first of these in 2020. 6 years later, they're still waiting for a launch. So it's called Golf, Greater Orbit, Larger Footprint. So it would be either a 2 or a 4U CubeSat with a transponder on it. RS series of satellites, always surprised when an RS satellite pops up because you don't hear much about it in this part of the world. But they always have a good budget in Russia for satellites, and the universities seem to have, particularly the engineering universities, they seem to have a good program of regularly getting these satellites into orbit. CAMSAT, so there's a series of CAMSAT CAS 5 to 11 with an unknown date for launch yet. Again, you don't hear much about these until they end up in orbit, but generally they're very good. A bit like the RS series, very similar in the size of passband and the signal strengths from them, usually pretty good. And then Axiom Space. Axiom is a private company that's building the first private space station. They've already had, I think, 4 missions to the International Space Station with private astronauts flying to the space station. They use the Dragon spacecraft, and most of the Axiom astronauts have participated in school contacts and general contacts from the International Space Station. So currently, and it changes quite often, currently the deorbit date for the International Space Station is something like 2030. And depending on which website you look at, it changes quite a lot. So there's talk of Roscosmos reusing parts of the International Space Station to make their own Russian space station. Axiom Space will be the replacement for the International Space Station and be a commercial space station, so it will offer commercial rides, but they have assured AMSAT and ARIS that they will have space for ham radio on board. And if you go to the AMSAT DL website, the list of upcoming planned amateur radio satellites is quite long. Some of them may never see orbit, some of them may be data only, but some of them may have transponders on them. So we hope in the future that we'll have more of these. But the chances of having an AMSAT 10, 13, or an AMSAT 40 style satellite with a huge orbit, I think until somebody wins the lottery, no chance of that. And that was it unless there's any questions. It was a quick run through. But if anyone wants a practical demonstration, I only charge 1 kilo for a contact at my house.
Is it possible to download your presentation?
Yes, I'll send it to Mike later on. Yes. Yeah.
Is the fun cube like whether the fun cube dongle things that part of it?
Yeah, so the part of the FunCube came from, if you remember, in the UK they started out with I think they called it the Fun Bus, and it was this bus that was going around the UK demonstrating amateur radio in schools. The FunCube satellite, the main outreach was the main idea for that. So they wanted to have a way for schools to have a cheap way of hearing the satellite. So they came up with the idea of the FunCube dongle and its own software. So you could simply demonstrate it with a laptop, a dongle, and like a turnstile type antenna at the schools. And that's been hugely successful. I think a number of people have based their PhDs on the telemetry coming from the satellites. The telemetry warehouses are still running, but the satellite has exceeded its life now. It was only expected to last maybe about 4 or 5 years. It's 12 years now, and it's still working. The transponder is still working on it, but it's tumbling, and it's tumbling really fast. And if you listen to the beacon, you can hear the rate that it's tumbling at, because it comes zzz, zzz, zzz. And if you make contacts on it, you have to talk really slow to get your call sign into, because it tumbles and the signal just goes up and down. But if you have right-hand circle polarization, you don't need to, you just carry on, and it works fine. So.
Dave, are there some people who use CW?
Yes, RS44. RS44, there's quite a few guys that use FT4, FT8, always a CW signal on RS44. And on FO29 when it's on, there's always in fact, there's one Israeli guy that I've never heard him on SSB. He's only on CW every pass. And on QO100, there's my father has just completed DXCC on QO100 on CW, which was more difficult because it's taken him 6 years, because there's not as many people who are interested in CW anymore. And generally on the DXpeditions, unless there's somebody who's a CW op on the DXpedition, it'll be SSB only. So, you know. Yeah. There you go. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.